Michael Moore, I am no William Gibson, that is for sure. 4 whole years ago, in August and November of 2012 respectively, we made episodes about the cultural singularity and the Olympics' role in it, and the effect of animated ZHAIFS on the US presidential election. I made some predictions. Internet culture has brought about the singularity. Here's an idea. Animated GIFs are an important part of the presidential election. Being now in the midst of both of those global events yet again, I thought it might be nice to check in and see where we're at. Man, Idea Channel has been around for a while, huh? I mean, look how much hair I had. Listen to how I pronounce zhaif. I say GIF. Maybe you say GIF. That is just fine. Different world. Anyway, before we get started, a quick recap. In the Cultural Singularity episode, we argued that in response to major global events, the internet content machine would generate endless memes in a practically automatic process, one divorced from specific humans acting as authors. The 2012 Olympics were used as the preeminent example. And in the US presidential election episode, we discussed whether or not the animated ZHAIF could be an honest-to-goodness source of political news, specifically as it relates to the marriage of talking points and to the actual physical presence of the candidates, a thing which has been important since the 60s, where presidential candidates not only had to sound smart, but also look smart. So first, let's talk about this point brought up by Asa Forsyth a while back. In both of these videos, I use internet culture as a shorthand for image macros at all. That is something that I've stopped doing. As Asa points out, such practices don't comprise a culture of their own, but are a reflection of pop culture practices, global culture, various economies, and the culture of the people making said content, which is a word that I hate, so I say it like I'm a pirate. Yar, content. Anyway, to point at things like this and call them internet culture is to perpetuate the kind of online-offline dichotomy we argue against here on Idea Channel. These things are not in some way separate from culture or a different flavor of it, they are fully a part of it. At the very least, it's imprecise and I think slightly denigrating to call such things internet culture or digital culture or whatever, and in so doing imply that they're separate from culture and the cultural situation of the people creating and sharing them. There are many internets and there are many cultures present on those internets. I think it's important to recognize that while they may all mingle and interact, there is not one homogeneous internet culture, and that fact is exciting and beautiful. And by the way, if you need some reading material, my friend Christina Shi wrote this really great piece on Chinese internet macros. We'll put a link in the place. I also talk in the Singularity episode specifically about a perception that the creation of content is divorced from people, thus giving all the agency to the technology. The memes, they just appear. Where are the people? Nowhere to be seen. It's like magic. This works against another idea we've come to value a lot here on Idea Channel, making sure the way we talk gives agency to people and not technology. Draka3 also points out that the economic situation is more complicated than simply saying creators don't expect recognition beyond what's self-evident or monetary payment. That's one, just literally not always the case, and two, it's important to remember ye old truism, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. And sometimes even when you are paying for the product, you're still also the product. Individual image macro creators may not expect a paycheck from the creation of their macros, but their work helps generate value for websites, which is to say, if the impetus to create isn't economically driven, the existence of locations which host, harness, and nurture that creativity often is. The appearance of visual humor is far from automatic. It's designed for and invested in. Which brings us to the media itself. Now, during the Rio Olympics, is there a glut of track memes, as I predicted? Are they used to great aplomb by the IOC and other broadcast agencies? Did animated ZHAIFS have a lasting impact on the presidential election or the people involved in it? Is a particular brand of internet image playing an influential role in this election? I think the answer, in all of these situations, is no. At work here may be something called the hype cycle, a sort of controversial model for the pervasiveness and overall interest in certain technologies over time, popularized by technology consultancy Gartner. 4 years ago, were we at the peak of inflated expectations for zhaifs and image macros as a communication technology, thinking them handily capable of doing more than just entertaining, which was their agreed upon purpose, it seems, at the time? Or maybe myself and the Idea Channel team specifically had inflated expectations. I mean, that would not be surprising. It's kind of our steez. Daniel McElroy commented that the zhaif seems a natural step forward from television, and while I agree with his points about repetition, and I think that they're very important, it seems looping is increasingly invading online video as well. The step forward may be online video adopting some zhaif qualities and not vice versa. And true, at present, there is still much left untold. The general election debates haven't happened yet, and may themselves generate more shareable media than the party debates have up until this point. Really though, the presidential race has been dominated by video, Twitter video, YouTube commentary, Snapchat Discover page coverage, and depending upon who you follow, maybe even Instagram stories at this point. What jokey conversations were empowered by image formats are now being had with video clips. Gwen Jocelyn pointed out a few years ago that zhaifs may take pressure off of civic involvement through their de facto association with humor, but I honestly wonder if that's the case anymore, if people still feel that way. The zhaif has done a lot of growing up in the last few years. I reflexively think of blogs like Media Matters and Skunk Bear as curators of serious, critical, and educational zhaifs, and I wonder if its use as an informational tool is reflected in its public opinion. And just as a quick aside, in the Age of American Unreason, Susan Jacoby attributes a strain of American anti-intellectualism in part to the growth in popularity of video and its feelings, affect-based ways. With print, one must think. With video, one feels, the argument goes. Of course, I disagree that video is inherently unintellectual or responsible itself in some way for anti-intellectualism, but I've seen plenty this year to remind me that video, especially broadcast video, especially the news media, has an unparalleled power to gift authority, even and often especially when it isn't deserved. Ideally, audiences seek to understand how video is able to be as convincing as it is, can create the affect that it does. That understanding allows us to determine if the authority that surrounds moving images, the subjects of those moving images, and the outlets making and broadcasting those moving images is truly deserved. Often, I believe it is not. Which brings us, in a sort of roundabout way, and at the risk of some serious tonal whiplash, back to the Olympics, which have spent no shortage of resources trying to make sure there aren't additional unauthorized streams of any format of their events. The IOC even banned the creation of animated zhaifs of their footage. Though semi-relatedly, if you haven't seen this New York Times info gif fic explaining how fast Katie Ledecky is, it's great. I have watched it many times. It is mesmerizing. The IOC has been copyright striking high-profile Olympics-related videos and has been working with Twitter to even remove offending tweets. And by the way, if you are a brand TM, your tweet might be offending if it simply includes #Olympics. So yeah, just be careful out there. Twitter doesn't have the resources to deal with harassment, but when a broadcast organization tells them to jump, they ask, how many tweets would you like deleted? Perhaps as a result of their iron content fist, at the time of filming this video, there has been remarkably little multi-purpose, remixed, or reusable Olympic content. The exact opposite of what I predicted 4 years ago, and some of us hoped would be the case today. Sure, there is Phelps Face, that Usain Bolt photo of him smiling, and some reaction image-like uses of the Spanish synchronized swimming team's entrance, which have been amazing, but for the most part, those are single jokes shared widely, not serially and infinitely recontextualized, and certainly it doesn't feel like we've moved forward from where we were during the London Olympics. Of course, there are many potential reasons why this might be the case. American broadcast audience, specifically at least for the Olympics, has dipped 15% since London, though they do claim that digital audience has significantly increased. Arguably also, meme making itself is in the hype cycle's trough of disillusionment, which is not a thing that I made up, leaving us only with memes of the dankest variety, which disappoints Michaela greatly. But perhaps also, after the meme-heavy 2012 London Olympics, the IOC developed and expertly executed a plan to maintain tyrannical control over their brand and media presence. There's been a relative lack, or it feels like at least stagnation, in the amount of user-generated content. And where this year users are so bold as to generate, there's a good chance they'll be met with takedown notices and tears. Maybe Olympic broadcasters saw in zhaif creation a challenge to video's authority. Not a threat to its audience size, no, but an indication that far from an authoritative broadcast stream, it's just simply available material. If meme creation is as principled as Peace Blaster, and really me from 4 years ago would have claimed, the locking down of Olympics streams would conceivably result in an increase in this kind of thing. It seems that's very much not the case. Dan Engel asked on Twitter if the zhaif ban is in some way antithetical to the enjoyment of the Olympics, and in some weird hyper-modern sense, I may say yes, or maybe, depending upon who you are, but it's definitely disappointing, and perhaps more importantly, boring. We're not gonna do a comment response video for this video, but I am really curious to hear what y'all think about the state of present meme creation and how it's reflected in the current US presidential race, if that's a thing that you've been following, and the Olympics, if that is a thing that you have been following. Two major political events that I think, if my sense is correct, in the last instances of them, we saw tons and tons of UGC, user-generated content. God, I hate that phrase. And it feels like now there's a lot less of that, and curious about what you think has happened, if anything, or if I'm just completely off base here. Let us know in the comments, and I'll be there hanging out. I'll say some things. I wanna, I'm curious. I wanna talk it through. Let's talk it out. In this week's comment response video, we talk about your thoughts regarding the internet as a public space. If you wanna watch that one, you can click here or find a link in the doobly-doo. Hey, to everybody who was involved in the book club discussion, that was super fun. Let's do it again. I think probably what we're gonna do is I'll make a thread to discuss how it went, what you thought, how we could improve, and then based upon that, we will probably do another Borges short story in the near future, iterate a couple times, and then move on to something longer. But yeah, I just wanted to say, super rad. I'm so glad that it happened and we did it. Let's do it again. If you're in or around New York next Wednesday, August 31st, I'm gonna be part of the Atlas Obscura live event that's happening in Brooklyn at Union Hall. If you wanna check that out, buy tickets. We'll put a link to that in the doobly-doo as well. We have a Facebook and IRC and a subreddit, links in the place where the links go. And this week's tweet of the week comes from a clue who points us towards an article asking whether or not No Man's Sky is infinitely boring. So at this point I've logged, I think maybe close to 20 hours, maybe 15 in No Man's Sky, and I'm having a great time. I can absolutely understand, as this article very, I think, accurately describes, why some people would not like it. I love it. I think it actually kind of is exactly what was described, but I don't know. Maybe I'm alone on that one. I think it's dope. I think infinitely boring is itself very interesting. And last but certainly not least, this week's episode would not have been possible or good without the very hard work of these gold medalists.